The Big 12 conference schedule is here, and Kansas State should be feeling good.
You are Locked On Kansas State, your daily podcast on the Kansas State Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Christian Rauh, and thank you so much for making Locked On Kansas State your first listen every single day. Welcome back to my everydayers. It's going to be a great day, and we are finally going to talk about the Big 12 conference schedule, and I feel really good about it, and I think you should too, and we're going to break it down game by game in conference in this one. Before we do so, today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Well, we kind of already knew one of the games, right? When we knew all of the games, actually, we knew where they're going to be. We just didn't know in what order, what time, and where, date, time, all that stuff, etc. We finally have that answered. The Big 12 schedule release show happened on Tuesday. It happened across multiple platforms: ESPNU, ESPN Plus, TBS, Max. Interesting spots where that's going to be. Makes you wonder where certain games might happen during the regular season. FS2 as well. But regardless of the case of wherever that may be, Kansas State has their schedule solidified. And a couple things right off the bat that I noticed when I saw the schedule right away. First off, all the games are going to be on Saturday. We don't have any Thursday night, any Friday night games. Every single game is going to be on a Saturday. That is super exciting because we don't have to worry about those late night Friday nights out on the West Coast. I was worried that the game at Arizona might be something like that. We don't have to worry about that. I was also even worried that the game against Utah could have been a Thursday or Friday late night one. Now, there still is the possibility that those games are still going to be a late start, maybe even like a 9 o'clock Central Time start. Like, there is a possibility that that is the case, but at least it's happening on a Saturday. It's easy to schedule. That means when we have the college football season and the entire prep here on Locked On Kansas State, we will have a full routine for you. Kind of getting in a routine and getting into every kind of nook and cranny for the game ahead. And we should be able to have live post games and things every single day of the week, including Saturdays and Sundays, since we have a full Saturday lineup. So when the college football season comes around, Locked On Kansas State is going to be coming to you 7 days a week, thanks to this juicy schedule. We also have 3 open weeks, which I think is really cool. Now, you can give a thanks and a nod to Dublin, Ireland for that one, because the fact that they're playing in week 0 against Iowa State, and that is technically a home game as well, you're going to get 3 bye weeks. And they come at very good times, very strategic times, in my opinion. We're going to break those down here as we go game by game. But I think this is a really good thing for Kansas State. I think this is a great way to keep the momentum rolling, this momentum we continue to talk about over and over this offseason as it continues to be, hopefully, another Big 12 championship run into the college football playoffs for the first time. And I think that there is a really good chance that they can do so. It's an interesting schedule. It's not the easiest schedule by any means, but the way it's lined up, it is super interesting for the Wildcats. And I think that they can really make do on what they have. And we're going to dig into that. So obviously we all know they're going to be playing 9 conference games. They're going to be playing 10 Big 12 opponents, but they're going to be playing 9 against conference schedules. We already knew, about the first one, week 0 in Dublin, Ireland, against Iowa State. That one is considered a home game, so that one just to keep in mind. And we all know what that one's going to be, right? We all know how it is on neutral sites for Kansas State. Could be a tough one. Iowa State is not a slouch. We had a tough time against them in Farmageddon this past season. I think with the college basketball season and how that's already becoming even more of a rivalry between these two teams, it's going to be a great game. I'm really excited to see how this team wakes up and just starts the season, week 0, the first game of the year in all of college football between these two squads. I continue to make the joke that this is the two teams, the 2 former champs, to become the ultimate Pop-Tart champion, right? Because it's the 2 past Pop-Tart Bowl champions. But this means more than that. There's more to this game than just that, more than just Farmageddon. It's the fact that you get to start off the entire college football season. Everybody will be watching. Everybody that is so excited to watch college football. There are not that many games on at week 0, especially between two Power 4 conference schools. It's going to be all eyes on Iowa State and Kansas State. And it's a really good opportunity for players like Avery Johnson and Dylan Edwards to start off a potential Heisman Trophy candidate season. Yeah, I said it. There's an opportunity for those players to be in consideration right off the bat, more than just week 0, by the way. Then we obviously know we have the non-conference schedule to finish it off, and we're not going to dig into that too much in this show because it's all about the Big 12 conference that was just released, the schedule. But week 2, they play back at home against North Dakota. They play at home against Army, and then they're on the road to finish non-conference play against a Big 12 opponent at Arizona. Now, if you remember, the game against Arizona was scheduled before Arizona joined the Big 12. This will be the last time that happens, but you are playing a Big 12 school in a non-conference play, same like we did last year. Okay, now, game number 2 is against UCF. The second game of the Big 12 Conference comes September 27th. It will be at home in Manhattan against UCF. And this game is interesting right off the bat. One, you're playing a team that, is still pretty new to the Big 12. This will be their second season coming in. But if you look at UCF, what they have to take on before they get to Kansas State, this is the first time, and it could be the first true test for the Big 12 Conference after Bill Belichick. And let me explain what I mean by that. The UCF Knights start their season off against Jacksonville State. Then they take on North Carolina A&T, excuse me. And then they have a bye week. What a rough time to have a bye week for UCF after 2 of those games. And then after that, they take on the North Carolina Tar Heels. Now, I'm not wearing this color by any means because I'm talking about the Tar Heels. That's just ironic. But they take on the Tar Heels a week before they head to Manhattan. Could be a good thing, could be a bad thing for UCF. And in retrospect, it could be a good thing or a bad thing for Kansas State. But something worth mentioning that they could be tested. We could get a good idea of what UCF is before we see them in Manhattan. Who knows what Bill Belichick's going to do with that team in North Carolina? It's this first ever time we're going to see a coach, a legendary coach, whether you're a Patriots fan or not, whether you like the guy or not, you got to respect what he did over his career in the NFL. This is the first time we're going to see him in college football with a recruiting class, with a team that wasn't so great last season. What happens this year at North Carolina, it'll be very interesting to see. Will it be a Colorado effect, like year 1 of Colorado with Deion Sanders, where all this hype was happening early in the year and they had to build upon that hype and they didn't become bowl eligible? To me, that seems more likely than them being, national championship favorites, but I digress. So that's the first one. UCF taking on Kansas State in Manhattan will be the second Big 12 conference schedule. That's the first one we heard. Then the next one, and I was really excited when I saw this one, because if you listen to my last show when I talked about my hopes for the Big 12 schedule, this was one of them. We get the Baylor Bears early on the road, and it'll happen October 4th on the road against Baylor. And this will be the first road test against a Big 12 opponent. Out of all the road games, I was hoping that this one would have been one of the earlier ones based on how Baylor played this past season. They had a kind of rough start to start the year, but then they caught lightning in a bottle and they became one win away, kind of like where Kansas State was, being in contention for the Big 12 championship game. A lot of things had to work their way towards the end of the season. It didn't happen. They wound up being outside looking in, just like Kansas State was, but they were still a great team towards the end of the year. Dare I say the hottest team in the Big 12 towards the end of the season. I didn't want to see that again. Who knows what happens at the beginning of next year? Will Dave Aranda be once again on the hot seat like it felt like he was at the beginning of this past season? And then he kind of turned it around. His team stepped up for him. But I wanted to see this team take on Baylor early in the year. And that's exactly what we're getting. If you look at Baylor's schedule, they have no walk in the park before they host Kansas State on October 4th. They are going to be tested. There is going to be no doubt about that. We are going to absolutely know what this Baylor team is going to be when we face them on October 4th. They start the season off against the Auburn Tigers, SEC school. They are a very tough school. They didn't have a great season last year. They were 5-7, but they are bringing back an interesting amount of offense, and they have a new quarterback in the system. It should be an interesting game nonetheless. Then they play on the road against SMU, a team that we all know was in the college football playoffs, but we think that BYU should have been over them. That's a different conversation for a different time. Then they play Samford. Then they play Arizona State, a team that was in the Big 12 Conference Championship, won the game, and was in the college football playoffs. And then they're on the road against Oklahoma State. All of those games happened before Kansas State. That is a tough schedule. They will be tested. There is a true scenario when Baylor and Kansas State play against each other that Baylor could potentially be, after playing 5 games, they could be 2-3. I mean, they could even be 1-4. Technically, depending on how Oklahoma State starts their season off, there is a solid chance that this team could be 1-4 hosting the Kansas State Wildcats. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Not really quite sure, but that's something to keep in mind. I'm really glad that we get to see Baylor early in this one. We're going to continue on with this schedule as we wrap up there, or continue on to the show. We got plenty more to talk about. We had 6 more games to discuss in this Big 12 conference matchup, but again, you should feel really good about this one. We'll talk more right here on Locked On Kansas State. Well, looking for tickets for the next big event, whether it is a concert, a comedy show, or a sports game, finding the right ticket at the right price can be a headache. But with Game Time Picks, it's never been easier. Let me tell you how it works. With Game Time Picks, the app does all the hard work for you. It curates the best deals, so you don't have to waste time searching through endless ticket listings. I have been using Game Time Picks for a while now, and here's why I love it. The seat view. It's a game changer. Before I even get to hit that buy button, I can see exactly where I'm sitting and will look in the venue, so it's reassuring. I don't have to worry about if I can see or not. The best part, it's covered by Game Time's lowest price guarantee. If you find a better deal somewhere else, they'll refund you 110% of the difference for wasting your time. Plus, your tickets are guaranteed to be delivered on time with easy cancellation options if something comes up. Ready to make your next event better? Well, download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, that's all one word, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. And again, that's code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lower price, guaranteed. And welcome back to Locked On Kansas State, your daily Kansas State Wildcats podcast. Hey, for your second listen of the day, check out Locked On Big 12. They have you covered throughout the entire Big 12 conference. They are talking a bunch about this Big 12 schedule release. The Big 12 squad has you covered. That'll be on the feeds on Thursday as well, talking about the schedule release. Drake Toll and the rest of the crew have you covered. So check that out. Locked On Big 12 for your second listen of the day. We are talking about the Big 12 conference schedule release, and it is an exciting one. And I think Kansas State has a good look. I think they have a really good feel about where they sit in this one. I mentioned the 3 bye weeks. I didn't get it at the beginning, but right after the non-conference schedule of Arizona, before they take on UCF, they get that first bye week. Really exciting there. After UCF and Baylor, after the first 3 Big 12 games, they're back at home October 11th to take on TCU. I'm not sure what we're going to see from TCU in this one. I was personally hoping this was going to be the senior day matchup, just a kind of a 2022 Big 12 championship vibes. That's not what we got, but I'm still not sure what we're going to get from this TCU team. Now, once again, we're going to get the Bill Belichick type of feel in this one. TCU starts their season September 1st at North Carolina, at the Tar Heels, and that one's going to be an interesting one. They also play SMU. They also play Arizona State and Colorado before they take on Kansas State. So once again, kind of like Baylor, we're going to see this team be tested before they take on the Wildcats in Manhattan on October 11th. To me, I think there's a conversation where you could maybe potentially put Sonny Dykes in the hot seat when it's all said and done once you're getting to the middle of the season against Kansas State. I don't know if it'll go that far, but I think there is truly a potential of that being a conversation when you get to mid-October in Manhattan between these two purple teams. I truly think there is a scenario. I'm feeling really good about this, if you can't tell. And the next one, after the second bye week. And I feel this is the most strategic bye week of them all. After TCU, you get an open week, and then you're on the road in Lawrence against the Kansas Jayhawks, Saturday, October 25th. We've already heard, I mean, this is like in the Big 12 chat we have with all the hosts, we making jokes and saying, the Big 12 free spot has already been claimed. Jalen Daniels is getting a surgery to open the season. He's already reported a minor surgery, and he will be limited in spring games. It seems like that always kind of happens with him. And with that being said, they are going to take on the Kansas Jayhawks in Lawrence on Saturday, October 25th. Feel really good about that game. Think the streak is going to continue. Now, Kansas, they have obviously an interesting schedule, and they play Missouri on the road this year. Always nice bringing back that Big 8 feel. I know we're the team on the outside looking in between that rivalry, but I love the fact that rivalry is going to be renewed, a little rekindled. Is that probably the best word? Rekindled. But I love seeing that one against Missouri. They also got UCF. They got Texas Tech right before us on the road. And they also are going to be on an open week before hosting Kansas State and the Wildcats. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that matchup. Once again, feeling good about this schedule. I want to know your thoughts. Let me know in the comment description below. I probably should have said that earlier. And by the way, if you haven't already, click that subscribe button. We got plenty more to talk about. We're going to break this schedule down game by game as we get closer and closer to the season. This is just the initial reaction to this schedule release, but I'm feeling really good right off the bat for this one. Next up, November 1st, taking on Texas Tech, and we're back at home in Manhattan. Texas Tech is going to be an interesting team this year. They have a really good recruiting class. They have a really good transfer portal. At one point, Texas Tech was seen as the best transfer portal class in all of college football. I don't know if they wound up holding that spot, but they could step forward and become a team that, takes that next step into the Big 12. They finished, I believe, 5th in the Big 12 this past season. Could they maybe make a step forward? I could see this one being a tough game. I could see this one being a really interesting game against Kansas State, but I'm glad that this one's at home. I think we kind of drew lucky straws with this one. Before they take on Kansas State, they got to take on Arizona State on the road 2 weeks beforehand, and then they are hosting Oklahoma State. If Oklahoma State is one of those tough teams, then this could be a really tough challenge for Texas Tech 3 weeks in a row before they face Kansas State. If I'm looking at this right, they got 1, 2, 3, 4. They have 4 games straight before taking on Kansas State without a bye. So this could be a team that might be suffering with injuries, could be fatigued before they take on Kansas State. And then they got to worry about BYU right after. Tough break for Texas Tech, taking on Kansas State and then BYU, back-to-back games to begin November. That's tough because I'm predicting that be the Big 12 championship. So if Texas Tech is a team that they think they can be after having a very good transfer portal, excuse me for the mix of words there, then that's their season right there. At Kansas State versus BYU, 2 weeks in a row to start off November. So we will start off a tough stretch for them. Got plenty more to talk about. I really like the way that the season ends, and I think this is a solid spot for them to gain momentum and get them into a Big 12 championship game and in the college football playoffs. We're going to talk about that to close up this show right here on Locked On Kansas State. Well, the big game is almost here, and there's no better way to make it even more exciting than with Prize Picks, the best place for daily fantasy sports. With over 10 million members, billions in winnings awarded, Prize Picks makes it easy and simple to get in the action. Well, here's how it works. You pick more or less on at least 2 players' projections, and if you're right, you could win up to $1,000 of your cash. Prize Picks has even more free picks for the big game, where Patrick Mahomes only needs to throw 1 yard to win. Pair that with one more correct pick and you're cashing out. I mean, perfect time right here. You get that Patrick Mahomes 1 yard. You go ahead and add Travis Kelce plus 50 yards or more. I know he had a bad game in the AFC Championship, but that's going to change, right? In the second Swifty Bowl. So go ahead and check that out. Maybe Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce for your picks. Check out the promo tabs to tail in any super sweet Millie winners, big game lineups. If you tail a lineup that goes 3 for 3, you could win a split of $1 million in promo funds. So check out the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. And let's wrap up this show here on Locked On Kansas State. The Big 12 schedule has been released. We got 3 more games coming at you to wrap up the season, and I really like this for Kansas State. They wrap up on the road for 2 of the 3, but I really like them. I really like them for how just the rest of the schedule pans out for the Wildcats. They're going to finish the season November 15th on the road against Oklahoma State. The following week, they're going to be on the road against Utah, and then they're going to be home for the final game of the season on senior night against the Colorado Buffaloes. I really like this schedule, the way it ends out. If you look at the Oklahoma State game on the road, Oklahoma State was terrible last season. You have to think they're going to improve one way or the other. They had multiple coaching changes. I mean, they have 2 offensive line coaches now, an interior and an exterior offensive lineman coach. They have a couple new coaches on the defensive side. Mike Gundy has done some changes to his internal coaching staff. They're going to be a new quarterback. That's going to be the biggest question. Who plays quarterback for Oklahoma State? And if they can find that out and figure that out, it's going to eventually probably happen towards the end of the season. That is the only downside of playing Oklahoma State this late. But I don't think, even though they have an improved roster and they find a way to be better than they were this past season, it'll be enough to be better than Kansas State. So I like this one. This is a perfect opportunity for Kansas State right after the Texas Tech game to build momentum in case that one becomes a loss. Then you got Utah on the road, kind of the same spot. Utah had a rough year last year. You're probably going to see improvements from them. They were a Big 12 favorite last year. They wind up finishing 13th in the conference. They're probably going to have some sort of improvement. But right before they play Kansas State, they got to take on Baylor on the road. That is a tough task to do. That is something I didn't want to do so late in the season. Utah drew that straw. So they got right before they take on Kansas State in in Utah, they have to take on Baylor on the road. So it could be a tough one. I'm not looking forward to this game actually against Utah because we had a tough time with them last season. This one could be a trap game, if you will. But if they can figure it out, I still feel really good about the momentum. Even with a loss, I'd feel good about the momentum heading into senior night against the Colorado Buffaloes. I think Colorado is going to take a major step back this year. I really do. I think just because of the roster alone, not having a Travis Hunter, a Shadur Sanders, I think that's just quite obvious that Colorado should be taking a step backwards. There was all these rumors about what was going to happen with Deion Sanders heading to the NFL. It doesn't look like that's happening. But I think that's just a hard thing to do. And I'm guessing that this team takes a step back. I think they still will be bowl eligible, but I'm guessing 7-5 is their best bet to end the season off against a Kansas State team who will be battling for the Big 12 Conference Championship game. Colorado, I don't think will be in the mix for that when it's all said and done. I think Kansas State finds a way to roll them. That's my initial thoughts on that one. So speaking of initial thoughts, let's dig into it. Right now, if I had to make my initial season predictions based on this schedule, we'll go 1 for 1 real quick to wrap up this show. I think they take care of business in Dublin. They're going to take care of Iowa State. I think they're going to have some revenge from Farmageddon last year. It's a huge game on a national stage. I think the Avery Johnson effect will be in full swing. I'm going to love what I'm seeing from these new wide receivers. I think if it's anything like the Rate Bowl, I think we're going to be in good hands. So count me in for a win against Iowa State. I think they take care of North Dakota easily in Manhattan. Army could be a tough challenge, but they have so much turnover. I think they take care of Army. Arizona on the road. I think Arizona is going to be the worst team in the Big 12 this season. And I think it'll be the final year for Brett Brennan in Arizona. So tag me in for a win. UCF, I think we can take care of them. I don't think the North Carolina thing will be a big issue, but I think we'll take care of North Carolina. At Baylor, that could be a tough game. October 4th, that could be a really tough game. I'm going to notch that one as a loss right now, even though I'm really happy that we're playing that one early. I think Baylor is going to be a really good football team this year. I think they're going to be one of the teams that's contending for a Big 12 championship spot. I think they finished top 5 in the conference, maybe even top 3 when it's all said and done. Next week, I think they take care of TCU. We're going to keep the streak alive and take care of Kansas. Texas Tech could be a tough one, but I'm going to give them the win. We're going to take care of Oklahoma State. Utah could be a tough one as well. So for the timing now, I'm going to give them the loss against Utah. I think Utah is going to find a way to snap back into form and be one of those top teams in the Big 12 as well. And then we finish strong against Colorado. So my initial thoughts, and these are obviously subject to change. I put on the screen, this is my predictions 1.0. Things will most likely change when it's all said and done, but I'm going with 10-2. I think this team, this program can be a 10-2 team. They're going to compete in the Big 12 championship game, and I think 10-2 is good enough to do so. And I'm still predicting it to be against BYU with this new schedule release. I think BYU got a nice hand dealt to them as well. 10-2. Are you happy with that? If it's all said and done, I mean, how can you not be? I mean, after what we've seen over the past couple seasons, even if it is a loss against Baylor, a loss against Utah, both of those on the road, that's an undefeated record in Bill Snyder Family Stadium. I'd be happy with that. I'd be really happy with that. And then obviously a huge Dublin win to start the year. 10-2 should get you also into the college football playoffs. Could be a good season for Kansas State. Let me know your thoughts in the description below. While you're there, click all the good buttons to keep this channel growing because we are so close to 600 subscribers. If you're listening in audio form, please do me a favor, rate 5 stars and leave a review. On Friday, we're going to drop all those great reviews every single Friday. Every positive review we'll be dropping and shouting it out on the show. But until then, please like the video, please subscribe. And this has been Locked On Kansas State.